Let's see. All right, okay. No one else is in the other room. Is there anyone? Let me quickly check before we start. So let me quickly see if there are any students. Okay, Andrew, you are here, right? Okay, great, awesome. Okay, great. Okay, yeah, the other, okay, no one else is okay. All right, okay. Nella, great. Okay, sweet, awesome.
Ya iba
All
a
right,
salir para irme y pisar la cara. Ya, pues yo lo llevo.
okay, all right,
Pero lo que no me gusta es que
sweet. All right, I think everyone is in here. Nella, you just joined. Was there anyone in the other Zoom link?
I believe it's Nella and I.
Okay, okay, sweet. All right, okay, awesome. Uh, okay, great, awesome. Sweet, awesome. So I'm gonna start recording on this one. Actually, it is recording already. I will do my screen share here. All right, it looks like there is one more student in the other Zoom link. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. I will share my screen here and we will talk about the last class and then what we'll be doing in this class. Okay. Okay. Sweet. You see my screen, okay? Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So in the last class was largely like introductory. We did little bit overview of digital forensics, and then we kind of had some reading to do. Today, what we will be doing is in first 40 minutes or so, we will be discussing the content and the chapters. We will break out into individual rooms. Um, what I'm going to try and do is have one room, and if there are more people, then one room at least per chapter, which was there. And then I know last time we did a bit of an exercise where we had people sort of go in and be chapter leads, reading leads. So I think we had 4 people who signed up. Uh, uh, so chapter 1 was um was right. Chapter 1 was Christina. Is that right? Are you is Christina here with us?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. So, for chapter 1 room, Christina, you will lead the discussion. And I'll kind of explain the format in a minute here, how we will go about doing it. Chapter 2, Anthony, you are here, right? Okay.
Hey, Mayor.
Awesome. Yeah, and then chapter 3, we have Craig and Andrew. You guys
Yep.
are here. Awesome.
Yes, yes.
Chapter 4, Rob, you're here.
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Awesome. So what we'll do is we will basically, we'll divide how many of us are there. We're 24. So we'll do 4 rooms of 6 each. And then I'll try to make sure, like I'll move people around a little bit to make sure the chapter reads are in the right room. For each of the chapters, what we will do is we will have 15 minutes for you guys to discuss that chapter as a group. The person who will open each of the group is the person who wrote the summary. Is that sort of clear? Like if you wrote the summary of the chapter in the Discord, so like yeah, I think it was Christina, you take like 5 minutes and introduce the chapter to the group, right? And then you can kind of do a free form 10-minute discussion within the group. So when you are introducing the chapter, kind of like sort of cliff note version of what you thought the chapter was all about, and then in the next 10 minutes when everyone else is discussing the chapter with you, you want to mention what you learned from the chapter, and then what you found kind of difficult in the chapter, difficult in terms of understanding, difficult in terms of it didn't kind of pair with your real life understanding of something like that. Okay. And then when we wrap up, we will go around each group for 5 minutes. And I will like one person from each group, and possibly it could be the same person who introduced, but I would like to be like a different person, like a new person who talks about what they learned in that group discussion session. Is that sort of clear?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. So we will for next 15 minutes, what we are going to do is we're going to break into 4 groups, and we are going to discuss the 4 chapters which you guys had reading about. Okay. So I am going to break out the participants here. You will be randomly assigned to groups, and then I'll move chapter leads around. Okay, so bear with me for a minute here as I kind of set up the breakout rooms. Okay.
I think we have 5 groups, right? Because chapter 3 have 2 leads.
Yeah, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put Andrew, you and Craig in the same group.
Okay, gotcha.
So that sort of makes it also easier, because otherwise, okay.
All right.
Awesome. So, awesome. Okay, cool. So next, there is 4 groups. You guys will be assigned to groups randomly, but then I will move the chapter leads to their appropriate groups. So people who are going to be the chapter read leads, don't sign up for the groups. I'll move you into your groups. Okay. So all right, I'm going to start the breakout rooms here. Okay, so room 1, I'm gonna move Christina. Okay, you are in room 1. Great. Room 2 is Anthony. You are in room 2. Perfect. Room 3, Andrew, you are in there. I'm gonna move. Where is? Let me make sure. Craig, what room are you in? Okay, Craig, I'm gonna move you to room 3. Okay.
Yeah,
All
room
right.
3.
Okay, great. Awesome. I think all the rooms are set up, so I'm gonna open them up. And we will be, remember, the rooms are by the chapter number. Room 1 is chapter 1, room 2 is chapter 2, room 3 is chapter 3, and room 4 is chapter 4. Yeah? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Please join your rooms.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I went through to that, and I think they're in a holding pattern or something. This is Michael Newton.
If
I'm
they're in
sorry.
breakout rooms, please wait to be assigned. That's what
Yeah,
my message says.
yeah, that's what it says. Um,
Okay, let me
is
send him a message.
is that normal or?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, okay.
Because it's
All
a
right.
new, I mean, it's
It's
all
a
different.
okay. So it's a new process. Gotcha.
Yeah. Hold on.
Okay.
Super news and girl power. She stands at the dark.
All right, guys, welcome back. We'll give a few minutes for everyone else to hop in. Awesome. Sweet. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay. Okay, great. I think everyone is in. Awesome. How was it?
Good. Informative.
Okay,
Good.
okay, sweet. Did you guys like the format? You want to keep doing something like that?
Yeah, but actually we do not prepare for this today. So it's like I don't like that we have to do this today, to be honest.
Awesome.
Yeah, maybe a little. No, it was fine. And
But I like it, go into the group chat and discuss about the chapters, stuff like that.
Okay, sweet, awesome, yeah, cool. I just wanted to quickly check in on that. We will fine tune this as we kind of go along in the class, yeah. So what we'll do is we'll briefly talk about each of the chapters. I'll kind of like maybe, talk for a couple minutes and then, I want to have one person from that chapter group to kind of like, chime in. And then we'll have maybe a couple minute discussion on a chapter and we'll cover all the 4 chapters. It's going to probably take us to 10:10. That's what we'll be doing for next 20 minutes or so. So let's jump into chapter 1. Okay, so this is a pretty basic introduction to digital forensics. It talked about like what are the procedures for like digital investigations, how people work in private sector. We'll also talk a little bit over this course like how people work in the federal and local investigation bureaus, and then the chapter really talked about a bit of like what should be the conduct of investigation be like, right? As opposed to other like hacking classes or things like that, digital forensics is a little bit more prescriptive. So you have to like do things in a certain way, and that's why it's sort of really important for you guys to understand that the reading is important because it kind of engages you and educates you in a certain procedure of doing digital forensics, and the procedure is really important for things to be admissible in court of law, right? And so that's important. I know some people in some rooms I kind of had overheard discussion what else you could kind of read on, and or what else you can sort of do to get educated on this. The first recommendation I would have is like actually if you've not read the textbook, and people have also posted a link to the PDF version of the textbook, I would encourage you to really focus on the textbook. The reason being is you want to learn the right way. And there is, as you kind of go on internet and various different sources, you are going to find a lot of ways to do the same thing. But then you're just going to be a little bit confused on what a procedure should be. So if you've not read the chapters, then I encourage you to do that, and they should give you a bit of an idea about it. Okay. The chapter talked a little bit, and this was your quiz question as well. So some of this content, actually all of the content was on your first quiz. So like these laws were created like right before internet, so a lot of these we still don't really have a very comprehensive digital forensics law. uh we're still going by like little bit like pre-internet era. So in 1973 the federal rules of evidence was created to kind of have consistency in federal proceedings, and a lot of that is sort of used. There was a bit of a patch to it in 90s, which is not a comprehensive ruling, but we still go by the proceedings which were developed pre-internet era. So a lot of like things you kind of see look a little bit dated, but the reason for that is the laws are rooted in 1973. So that was the one of the questions on your quiz. I won't go too much into other things in here. Maybe, the group one, do you have to any questions? What was your discussion like? Let's hear from group one.
Yeah, hi. My name is Abdislam Kassel. So what we discussed about in the room chat, so we talked about digital forensics, and we say that it's the practice of collecting and analyzing and presenting digital evidence of for legal purposes. And when it involves preparing computer investigations and what's the difference between the public and the private sector investigations. Then we talked about maintaining professional conduct and what else? And a systematic approach like was essential like for preparing for digital forensic investigations that including procedures tailored for private sector cases and the data recovery workstations is like what software like where it has to meet a specific requirement, and this is like related to the workstation as well. And investigations procedures is like where it involves critiquing cases to ensure accuracy and reliability of evidence.
Okay, so did you guys have any questions on the chapter?
Yes. So the questions what we would like to ask is that when they doing the digital forensics, like how they do it, like where they doing it, or like when they doing it, and what's the second question is like what's the requirements for the workstation?
Okay, sweet. So the first question is when you kind of do digital forensics, how you do it or when do you do it? And then the second question is, what are requirements for the workstation? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would
Okay.
like
So
to answer the first question if you don't mind, but I'm not like 100% sure, but just I want to make sure that's the right answer.
yeah. So, for every type of investigation, and this is sort of maybe a good segue into the summary of the chapter, like for every type of investigation, there is a process where, you want to do your investigation in a way which is has two purposes. One is it's acceptable in the court of law, and then the second is it's reproducible, that it doesn't tamper with the evidence. So if you are working with a mobile device, then you want to do your investigation by making a copy of that device, and there are tools, autopsy, which is kind of in the desktop world. In the mobile world, there is a tool called a Celebrite. There is tools which will clone the information in a non-tampering way, and then you do your investigations on that. So this sort of setting up, you can kind of call a little bit as your digital forensics lab, and how you do it for a network, how you do it for a computer, how you do it for a cell phone device has its specific tools. And through the duration of this course, you will learn about those things. The second important thing you want to remember is like, how you do it and then, what your tool set is also depends on whether it's a public sector investigation or a private sector investigation as you working. So if you are working in the public sector, you have to follow a bit more of paperwork, like, before you take a device from a crime scene or something like that, you need to do the appropriate paperwork and such, right? So there is a difference in terms of process there. So kind of keep that in mind. Um, you know, um, both criminal and corporate policy violations can go to court, like, so keep that in mind. Then the chain of custody of your evidence needs to be tracked. So you really should take notes. And the notes should kind of show you how you got the device. I got this device at a crime scene, then I took it in a bag which was sealed, and then it was transported to a lab where it was cloned. So all that chain of custody you kind of want to show, okay? So that's really important. So this chapter really kind of sets you up for the idea of, like, how do you do digital forensics. You want to follow in the term in the term of the law, and most of these things follow from 1973's kind of standardization of federal investigation. And then there was an update in 90s and also early 2000 around, like, around internet as well as cell phones. But those are really just like updates. We haven't had like a comprehensive standardization on the federal level in terms of digital forensics. We still go by 1973 kind of processes there, okay? So keep that in mind. All right, we'll wrap up chapter 1 here. Any closing thoughts anyone has from any other groups on chapter 1? Any questions?
Do you mind if you say one more time what is the name of the tool that you mentioned right now? We have to use it.
In your labs, you will run into a tool called Autopsy. And then there is a paid tool for phones called Cellbrite, but that's something which we're not going to have access to. But we'll talk about it in the class. All right. Okay. All right. Chapter 2. The investigator's office and lab. What should the digital lab look like? Okay. Just like, you probably have seen this in like a lot of crime shows, right? Like where there is like a forensics lab, a piece of, evidence, like a hair from the crime scene or fingerprints or, DNA, etc., gets sent to a forensic lab. So there is an equivalent of digital evidence sent to a forensic lab, and then how its process is called as digital forensics lab, if you will. And it has some hardware, software equipment. And then these labs have accreditations from, from ASQ. So they, that's kind of establishes a chain of custody. It doesn't tamper with the device. Any other lab can also reproduce those results from the evidence, right? So that's sort of what a lab does. It standardizes and does things in a reproducible way. And so a lot of tool sets and a lot of techniques which you kind of are learning in your labs of this class are what are actually used by the digital forensics labs, okay? So, if you were to work, if you had a job to be in one of these labs, what would be the duties there, right? Like you have to kind of, make sure your lab has quality assurance processes. You have chain of custody procedures. You are able to kind of do it in a standardized way, right? Like, and that's on a very high level. On each of like individual staff roles, they need to know about, different hardware, like, networking devices like routers, uh, you know, uh, internet modems, things like that. So hardware, like, desktop, like PC, Mac. So you want the staff to be very, very knowledgeable about hardware and software, right? And so, and then when it comes to like investigating, you want to know the individual staff needs to know about the file types, like, you're looking for images, whether you're looking for JPEGs or PNGs or stuff like that. But apart from all of this, right, like really what a lab staff, and if you were to, work in one of these labs, what you really need to kind of learn more than the tools and more than the technologies, you want to learn the process of, like, how to do so that you can deductively reason and prove something like, hey, this file was deleted from this device, and this was an incriminating photograph, but it was deleted. So now, that means like there was something to be hidden here. And then what is it, and what's your reasoning for it, and things like that. So as a digital forensics staff in the lab, you need the deductive reasoning the most, because your people are not going to come you to kind of say, hey, tell me, what version of operating system you're running, how many files you found. What they are going to come to you is like, hey, did you find anything incriminating which suggests for or against this particular case, right? So they want your expert answer. They don't want like data, right? And so you want to be able to kind of, show your answer um, with all the reasoning for it, right? And that's what is going to get admitted to court of law. Okay, so maybe I'll give a couple minutes for group 2. So who is you want to talk about what you learned, and then if you have questions on the chapter. And I'll take a couple questions from here as well. Andrew has a question. All right, who from group 2? I think it was Anthony, your group, right?
I guess on my group, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So who wants to summarize as well as kind of talked about what discussion you had? If there's no one,
Yeah,
and
I can quickly kind of, I don't
go
know.
ahead. Yeah.
I mean, chapter 2. Oh, God, the wrong notes. Sorry, 1 second. Guess we went over what the digital forensic lab is, the purpose, lab responsibilities, requirements, space requirements, workstation requirements, an inventory, some lab budget planning that goes in, like cost loads, software upgrades, facilities, cost of like facility upgrades. And then there was pretty good coverage in the chapter on detailed forensic certifications. We went over that. Evidence handling, business case developments, disaster recoveries. There was a lot of information. I don't know if Andrew wants to finish up.
Yeah. So did you guys have any questions which came up in your discussion?
No, not really.
Okay.
Just mostly on how to handle the lab. We kind of talked about some lab problems.
Okay, sweet. All right. So maybe let's start with the question Andrew has here. Like, what happens when you're doing digital forensics and the computer was infected, by malware, like the computer which was doing forensics had like a bug in it, right? So that is very critical, and this is where, the evidence containers and like having a lab and like, really having a process is important. So there are several things, right? Like when the device is collected from the crime scene or like from an investigation, right? The first thing which is done is that, there is like some checksum done on it. Like basically, if it is a computer, you will take the hard disk and you will have like a hash code for like the data on the device. And after that, the hash code on that hard disk should not change. So for example, if you took this hard drive to the digital forensics lab and the lab had a virus, and it for some reason it was like, it was the crime crew or the gang had planted like a bug in the digital forensics lab, which wiped some files from this hard drive, which was your evidence. So now what's going to happen is the next time you try to do the checksum on this hard drive, your hard drive, it's not going to be the same as the checksum which you kind of saw when you collected the device. And so what automatically that happens with that is then you cannot use that as evidence. So that's why the process is very important. If your computer or if your system for any reason is infected and it tampers with your evidence, then no matter how detailed work you do and how incriminating proof you have, then you have to throw your work away, and that evidence cannot be submitted in court of law. So what does that mean is like, then you really need to make sure that your digital forensic labs are like, not hacked. You follow all the processes on them to keep them secure. And the other aspect is, let's say, even if your lab is not hacked, but like somehow the device which was sitting in your lab, someone kind of broke into the forensics lab and then found that device and deleted the files, right? And that also shouldn't happen. So you also need to physically protect the device. So that's why there is this idea of evidence containers that, they're not only physically secure in the lab, but they're additionally secured, like, you keep each evidence separately in its own lock and key, for example. That could be a process you follow. But you as the lab, lab employee or lab manager or lab owner, what have you, it's your responsibility to make sure that the evidence is secure, the evidence is not tampered with. And subsequently, if you give it to any other lab, they are able to do the same things, or they're able to show the same kind of things which you talked about in your evidence through their investigation work. So cool. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was thinking prior to copying the data, they check everything was clean, there's no malware infection. But during the course of the investigation, like you mentioned, if someone stole the drive, that's the reason why they have multiple copies. And my next question is there a limitation on how many original copy of the drive that you got from the crime scene that you can make copies of in case one is tamper, malware infected, or stolen? Is there a number of copies that you can make?
No, there is no limitation on the number of copies, but also keep in mind, right? Like end of day, your source of truth is going to be your main evidence. So, no matter if you made a copy or not, you want to make sure your main evidence is kept intact, right? And so, but you can make as many copies as you want, and kind of work from it. There is no limitation there, but you don't want that original evidence to be lost, because that's going to be source of truth.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sweet. All right. Okay, cool. Any other questions on this chapter before we move on to chapter 3? All right. Okay. So I think Andrew and Craig, it was you guys as group. So I'll talk a little bit, this, the data acquisition chapter is great because it sort of talks about like couple things I alluded to you earlier, right? Like, how do you take these disk images, right? And so or like if it is a hard disk or if it is a network device or if it is a cell phone, right? What do you actually get? So what you get from the devices is really like, sector by sector, byte by byte, a replica of the hard disk. And these are kind of, these are basically, image files. And so not image like a JPEG or a PNG, like a photo image, but these are disk images. And so these images are what you kind of suck out of the device as a as a data acquisition tool. And there are very specialized devices, whether it's a hard disk cloner or it's like devices like Cellbrite, which kind of clone cell phones and things like that. So there are these like forensic acquisition devices which you basically feed the hard disk into and it makes a copy, or you feed the cell phone into and it makes a copy, right? And so you kind of use some of these in the field. The way these acquisition tools really work is, they basically just do, as I said, like a byte by byte, sector by sector copy of the data. They don't touch anything on that particular hard storage, because if you touch anything or if you write even a single byte, then that evidence becomes tampered. So it kind of mounts that hard disk in a read-only mode and just copies data. So there are some procedures which these devices follow so that the original evidence remains intact. And so the chapter talks a little bit about it. It talks about some raw formats, some proprietary format, and then there is a format called as advanced forensic format. But end of day, all these formats, what they're basically doing is they are copying the data of the hard disk byte by byte, and the way they do it is they just kind of mount the device as read-only and kind of copy data sector by sector, right? If it's an older hard disk, if it's a SSD, it's similar but in a little bit different way of like, so that's very important. This chapter, in among all the chapters, starts to sort of get a little bit more technical. It talks about like types of files and things like that. How would you create a disk? How will you kind of transfer a disk? How would you copy between devices? Various commands for it. Commands like on Linux, you will find a command called as dd, which is for disk copying. So it sort of talks about that, and then one thing you kind of will is like live CDs. What these are basically, you are running an operating system on a device, but you are not touching any of the hard disk of the device. So sometimes you guys have probably experimented with this already, like you stick in a USB device and you can boot into Linux on your machine, right? What is that? That's like a live CD of an operating system which you kind of use, and there are different versions of Linux to do it. And in this kind of context, the tool which is sort of used the most is, like I mentioned it before, is called Autopsy. And there is some labs which kind of talk about Autopsy. There are different other types of tools as well, and the labs will kind of talk a bit more about them. I did you guys discuss about RAID in your discussion group?
Just that it was complicated and terrifying because of the size of, the data involved, and then like the complexity of all these different systems, and it seems to add a lot of complications to making a disk image.
Right. And so the reason the data is kind of stored on, when it's siphoned off a device, it's stored on like, on a bit more robust system like RAID, is so that, it can be there for a longer time. So the way you want to think of RAID is it's nothing but this idea of that you don't keep one copy of data, but you keep maybe 4 copies of the data or 3 copies of the data, and there are different types of RAIDs. But basically what you're doing is for your data, you are keeping multiple copies. And what you're really trying to protect against is like, what if like one hard disk dies, right? Because hard disks, the magnetic hard disks are prone to failure, and like every couple of years the hard disks just die. So you don't want to be a crime lab and the case is going for like 7 years and all of a sudden you lost all the forensic data, right? And so that's why you want to do that. And so it's nothing but the idea of like storing multiple copies of data in case of hardware failure. Okay. Sweet. So I'll kind of switch to you guys. You guys have someone from your group who wants to summarize and kind of talk about your discussion?
Yeah, I can do it. We weren't able to get a volunteer from the crowd to summarize our discussion, but hopefully people will chime in if I miss anything. You've covered obviously the basics of the chapter. We talked a lot about how technical it was, and that it feels pretty abstract at this point. Like until we actually have a chance to go through the process and do it a few times, I think it feels very abstract. And so there's a lot of confusion and questions and uncertainty about like, how does this actually work? Like, there's so many options. Even just like, what kind of disk format do you choose? There's a moment in the book where, it lists all the different file system formats, and there's a lot of them. From where we're sitting, it's really unclear like how much that matters, like what are the consequences of some of these decisions. And so obviously a lot of that would become clear if you were using the same tools all the time. You would get to understand them better. But I think that was a common issue that people had, was just like, I did the lab, I read the chapter, I don't have any idea what's going on. And then I think also there's some, using Linux and Windows, it seems like some of the tools are in, one system, other tools are in another system. It would be interesting to hear more about kind of how you decide which operating system to use. Are people in forensics usually using both or more operating systems? And, how do you actually deal with all of that data in a way just functionally that you can keep track of what's where as you're swapping it from computer to computer.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's take a couple questions, right? Like, so first is like, how does it all kind of come together and what you're learning? And then what tools like people really use day to day. So, the first is like what you're kind of going through the chapter and like a little bit more like, the underlying things about it. It's giving you like really in detail on like what goes into data acquisition technically in this chapter. And it's setting up your kind of fundamental, right? Like, because this will help you kind of adopt to new tool sets, but this is not how it works in the field, right? But here, like what you're learning is like, a bit of nuts and bolts. and why a RAID is used, or what type of why it's important to think about, like, whether you use a Windows system or a Linux system or something else specialized, right? Like, so those help you kind of get the fundamentals there. Like, it can be done in any system. The important part of data acquisition is you don't tamper with the data. You don't like even write a single byte on it, right? Because that's not going to be okay. So in terms of tooling, the ones which I will say is like, most of this stuff, if you are like day-to-day working, like you have specialized devices to do it. There is like a disk cloner. You just put the hard disk in it, it clones the disk for you. You're not going to manually run like a disk copy command, if you will. So the ones which, like autopsy, there are different, like, specialized hardware devices which run autopsy. So what it is basically autopsy does is, you can run autopsy on Windows or Linux, or like any, advanced versions. But this is like one of the open source digital forensics hard disk cloner, if you will. And then for cell phones, there is right. Yeah, so there is a tool like this called Cellbrite, where you just basically, it kind of, it will look, it will basically, it will look something like this, where you just give it, yeah, it will look like a little kind of like, industrial, a case where you stick in the phone and it will clone the phone for you. So, this is sort of what is used in the field. This is pretty widely used by most law enforcement, called Cellbrite for phones. So there are specialized tools in the field which we'll use, but under the hood, what they're really doing is what you kind of read in the chapter. Yeah. So I think, let's see, there is one more question. Why are collisions not a concern in digital forensics? So to small number of files with MD5, SHA-1 for forensic examination of data files, collisions are of little concern. So, this has a little bit to do with, collisions. What it means is, if you took a file, right, and you wanted to kind of give it like a unique number, like a fingerprint to it, right? And so the way you do that is by some sort of a cryptography algorithm. And so, MD5 is one algorithm, SHA-1 is another algorithm, SHA-256 is another. The problem with giving a fingerprint is like the older versions, like MD5, for example, like, as there are more and more files in the world, there is a chance that, two files, even though the data might not be exactly the same, but they might have the same hash, or same fingerprint. Because what you're really trying to do is you're trying to get like some sort of data, and you're trying to kind of create a fingerprint for it, right? And the data could be like, let's say 10 gigabytes, and then, you're trying to compress it into like, into a hash. So the reason that's as much is because some of it is old, and some of the older hashing techniques were used, which has collisions. Basically, they were not as refined before. So it's similar as like, our older fingerprinting techniques didn't have like as refined tools. So there is sometimes chance that two people's fingerprints, even though they are not the same, they might like appear to be the same, because in that day and age, the technology was not as advanced. But as we go further along, so like if mostly today people don't use like MD5 or SHA-1, they will use SHA-256 or SHA-512, which is more refined and it will kind of avoid collisions. It just has to do with dating, but it basically it is a little bit less concerned because your universe of investigation is very limited. It's only the files on that particular device. You're not trying to compare with like the rest of the world, right?
I see.
Yeah.
So is it true then to use a SHA that is of a higher value? You mentioned
That's
SHA-1, do not use SHA-1, but use 256 is probably more accurate for the digital fingerprint.
That's right. That's right. So
Okay.
in general, like that. Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Okay. Anything else? I know we're 10 minutes running behind. All right. All right, let's move to chapter 4, processing crime and incident scenes, right? So, you know, a bit of little bit same, right? Like, we talked about a lab. Now, what about the scene where you are actually getting the information from? Like, let's say it's a car crash. Let's say it's a homicide. Let's say, it's a digital hack, right? So, you basically there are steps based on the type of scene you are at, on like what type of preparation you should do for getting the evidence, right? And so whether if you are in a home, whether you should collect all the cameras, all the routers, like so let's say there was like a incident in a home, right? Like if you're creating digital evidence from the home, what are you going to make sure like all the cameras which were at the home kind of get taken out as part of the digital evidence? Like if there was like a router, if there was like a Wi-Fi router, things like a home modem, your Alexas, things like that, right? There is like so many devices in a home. But if it were like a industrial system, there is also same kind of scenario. There might be like, there might be industrial automation systems which you have sensors in a factory floor, for example. There might be cameras for sure, right? Security cameras, things like that. So you want to kind of like, and each of those devices has a protocol. Um, you know, um, US courts now accept digital evidence, but it has to be sort of, followed a certain rules of the evidence. And so this chapter really talks about the rules of that evidence. And so again, like a lot of these rules are a bit dated because they kind of date back to 73, and then there were patchwork updates on top of it. So, a lot of the digital records sound like that, little bit dated, especially on the rule side of things. And, uh, so let me see, anything interesting in here. There is a field kit. So this, like, for every type of crime scene you are going to go, you're going to carry a briefcase which is appropriate for it. For example, right? Like if you are collecting evidence from the scene. So it depends on the scenario. The ones which you kind of like specifically you'll see a lot more in the toolkit are things like SATA cables. What are these cables? These are nothing but these cables you can kind of plug into the back of the hard disk and just clone the whole hard disk, right? And they usually come with like that like little briefcase I showed you, which has like Cellbrite or Autopsy or any of the tools. So you can kind of see of that. We'll learn a little bit more as we kind of go along. And I talked about it, right? Like a little bit like, And this is probably a good like example, which maybe, will summarize this chapter a lot better. Is like, if you're at the home, you will see like there is like every home has like, crazy amounts of devices. So, at a crime scene, you of course need a warrant if it is going to be part of a public investigation. For a private investigation, like if it's a company or such, you just need their acceptance for it. But what you're going to collect, like what would you collect? Like in this scenario, what all information would you collect? Like, can you tell me in this sort of crime scene, what will you collect as digital evidence? Like from what you see on your screen.
So you'd collect all of the monitors, all of the computers, that disk drive on the desk. I think I see like a cell phone too.
The digital stuff, right?
Yeah. What else do you see in here? I see a few more things here in the second room here.
Yeah, I see the cable is connecting the computer and the printer in the second room.
Right. Yeah. So.
And I'm not sure why they want to print it on a second room, and I'm not sure.
It's so what all would you take the printer?
Yes, as evidence.
What about the fax machine over there?
Oh yeah, that's also is that a fax machine or a printer? I can't tell.
Yeah.
Or a scanner. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Sweet.
like anything print to paper. That's the number one.
Right. Sweet. Would you take the cable? If there is a cable there might also be a router, right?
Right. And also I see a couple of CDs on the other room on the desk.
Right. So those are also digital evidence, right?
What about the towers? I don't know if anybody mentioned the towers.
Yeah. The computers.
Yeah, the computer. Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, so you get the idea. It's huge, right? Like, and so that's sort of what you want to be, aware of. Like, of course, like for all of the evidence, you need warrants. Sweet. So group 4, I think it
Yeah,
was Rob. Rob, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Rob did a great job of kind of taking us through the chapter. And then we had a discussion around it. I think overall, what I found interesting was how like crime scene, like forensic law enforcement, heavy a lot of the content was. That was just surprising to me. But in hindsight, it is not surprising given the title forensics. I think that it was a lot of this chapter 4 was reminiscent of like a lot of the crime scene shows that I watch personally and I think are really popular. And then we spent some time talking about the net labs and how it was a really good opportunity to kind of play around with some of these tools that otherwise we might not have access to. So yeah, we had a good discussion. And I don't think we had any questions or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. Sweet. No questions. I think Nella has a great comment here. Like, if you were to take any items, right? Like if you maybe took one thing out of this chapter, it is like, before you take anything, in a public sector crime, you want to make sure you have a warrant for it. Okay. Um, um, and that's the key sense. This is like any of the public sector cases, you need warrant, you require warrant. The other important part is like, when processing an incident or a crime scene, you want to make sure there is a security perimeter, like as you are sort of doing stuff, right? Like if, like for example, you were like trying to get the CDs and someone just walked in there with like a whole stack of CDs, or like someone just kind of put some CDs there on that same desk. Now it's just going to be like invalid, right? Like because you're like, I don't know what CD was here and what CD was not there, right? So you want to have a security perimeter as things are going, just like, standard stuff in that sense, but you're also kind of, there is like now all of these protocols are very much more advanced now because like, especially like just like cops, like a lot of investigators also wear body cams, right? Like, so as you're doing things, everything's sort of being recorded. So if you did like one misstep, like, it's being recorded. So like, even if you like, let's say you took only one CD and you forgot the second one, it's going to be recorded. So okay, so that it's pretty like, we kind of went a little bit in all of these chapters. I encourage reading it. A lot of it is a quite light read. Maybe only chapter 3 has a bit more technical things like, disk copying and things like that. But it will go very fast if you have not finished reading. I encourage doing that. And the reason you want to, focus a little bit more on the textbook is because what you're really learning is, is a process. You're getting familiar with the terminology, how to process cases and things like that. And keep in mind, right, like this was put in place in 1974. So it is and it will still be around for a little bit longer, right? Like, or a lot longer, you never know. And like a lot of things which are sort of added to it have been added as a patchwork, and so that's why like a lot of these things seem a little bit like insane in this day and age, but these are what are kind of done in the court of law and in the field, right? It's a little bit more agile, it's a little bit more advanced if it is like a private investigation, right? Like if you are investigating like a theft in a company, for example, right? And they're just doing it as a private investigator, you would be moving a lot faster, you will be doing different tools, like things like that, right? But for things to be admissible in court of law and such, like you wanna comply. So that's why the reading part, the part of like getting familiar with the terms is important. Sweet, awesome. So I know we went maybe 20 minutes more than what I had planned for this section. How was this format and discussion? And we'll switch to. We'll switch a little bit into the labs. Okay, comments, questions on the format for the chapters? Okay, it looks like good. Okay, sweet. So we will wrap up for this. I'll talk a little bit about week 1 NetLabs before we wrap up. Lab 1, 2, 3, and 11. Any comments you guys have there on the labs? And I'll at some point like do I want to give a bit more time for people to finish, but we'll go lab by lab as well to summarize them. But any comments on lab 1 through 3 and 11?
I have a general question. This was my first time using NetLabs, and I was kind of surprised. There didn't seem like it was very clear like what was being kept track of, like what I was trying to accomplish in terms of what you would be looking at to make sure that I did it. I mean, I went through the steps and I did everything that was called for, but yeah, I found that a little confusing. I thought there would be some kind of like questions to answer or So maybe you could talk about that a little bit. And then just as a general comment, I thought they were really great, but the time limit is tough. Like, you start to get close to the end, and I would have liked to have taken more time to actually understand what I was doing in some cases, but I felt like I had to rush to beat the clock.
So you did 2 hours of reservation or an hour?
I was only ever able to make 1 hour reservations at a time, and that's probably a me problem.
Okay.
But
No,
I couldn't figure out how to make a 2 hour reservation.
I think my max was 50 minutes. I don't even think I got a full hour.
Yeah, likewise, an hour equated to only 50 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Was anyone else, did anyone do like, 2 hour reservation?
I was able to get to the 2 hours, but I couldn't resize my screen.
Okay.
I couldn't press start on lap 2.
Yeah,
Um,
same issue.
Okay. Someone had a tip here. I think Raven, you had a tip of like how.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
what I had to figure out was that there is like an invisible scroll bar on the right side of the screen, that you kind of have to put your mouse over to find to like take the screen down. And then also too, I think there's somewhere in there, like if you're in the Windows system and you click that drop down, it's something that says like resize screen or like reset screen. So sometimes I'll do that, and that'll like resize the screen for me. So that's kind of, but the only problem I did really have was like when I wanted to add more time to the lab, it wouldn't let me. But I think maybe because I had already maxed out on the 2 hours, so I think maybe that was it. But yeah, I was able to get in and do the labs, but I wasn't able to add more time.
Yeah. So couple things. So what I would recommend is like before you even start a lab, like you look at the PDF, and I think uh Christina had I think, yeah, Christina had this comment as well. Like, read the PDF, like what you're going through, right? And so these are not like, hack the lab kind of labs, or like, hack the box, or try hack me, where there is capture the flag style. It's really just something you're doing to get familiar with. So it'll walk you through like basic steps of like doing something. You're going to create an image. You're going to create, you see like what type of image you're creating, a E01 image, and then you don't know what really means, like what does E01 means, like that's okay. And you're creating that image for this Seagate drive. This is your source, this is your destination, and then you're going to verify the content of it. This is your lab 1, and then you create, what did you do? You created and verified 2 digital forensics images that are ready to move to the next phase of on the chain of custody, right? So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what you get familiar with. You try to do 2 hour reservations. 1 hour is also fine, but you work through it. And what sort of required from this is like, it's not like a question answer, but like write a 2 to 4 page reflection essays on what you learn in the labs. And 2 to 4 is not per lab, but just for all the 4 labs, if you write like 2 to 4 page essay, that's completely fine. What did you learn doing that, and what did you learn doing as a forensic analyst? And so that's your assignment to submit. So that's your, what did you learn? What's your reflection on it? That's sort of what is the assignment here. If you are not able to resize, it's fine. You can work with the windows with the scroll. I think the resizing is like maybe a very laptop browser and operating system dependent thing going with different people. But it's okay if you can't resize. Maybe give it a shot a couple times with all the tips other people have given you. There is you
Like
know,
I
get
have,
the,
it's just I can't press start, which means I can't get past like the seventh thing, and there's 47 slides on there. So that's definitely kind of an issue.
yeah, you can use the arrow keys, but the other part is on the
No, they're
window.
not. Like it literally won't go down at all with the arrow keys. It's just adjusting the slide of the different like outbox options. Like I've had technical issues with NetLabs before, and that's where I get really frustrated because I can't control that system. So I've been, relogging in over a course of like the past 2 weeks, different days, different times, but like I can't do that. Like it's not doing anything. I've made the window full size on my laptop. It's just not working for me. So I'm getting frustrated.
Yeah, why don't you send screenshots of how it looks on the Discord, and we'll look at
I
it.
think I already did last night, actually.
Yeah, okay. Let's take a look at it on there. Okay. For anyone what system are you using, Nella?
For that, I'm using my MacBook Pro.
Okay. Is anyone else using MacBook Pro and had the same issue?
Yes, I'm using a MacBook Pro, but I don't have this issue.
You do or you don't?
I do not.
Okay. Is there a chance you can maybe work with Nella to see if you can help her?
I just sent her a text message right now. I was like, ask the professor if you can share your screen. We might help you over here, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not using that computer for this Zoom, so it would be okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm using one.
It's a lot of setup for me to get that started. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. So
Windows, sorry,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm using Windows 10. I'm having the same issue, but this is me though.
Okay. Yeah. What I would say is like, maybe pair up with people who have solved it, because it's going to be a lot of it is dependent on the type of computer you have. And, there might be a different trick. I only have one computer. So from that perspective, I would encourage you guys to help each other on it. But in case you're having like really difficulty getting started, again, the important part of like this is to do step by step and show your work. You're not getting dinged if you kind of like don't do it, but if you're getting dinged if you don't make an effort. So show your work and post it on Discord if there is if there is a thing. I think Rob also has a comment here. He's saying he tapped a couple times and pressed return and it worked. So that's maybe, there is, it is a finicky system. That's the part of the system. But you have to be patient and try different things with it.
Yeah, I have been.
So, and this is the closest you would get in terms of a hands-on forensic lab. So we are lucky to have this system for us. And other part would be like, if you are getting hung up on one browser, try a different browser, or even if you have maybe another computer, try it. But it does give you an idea, or just work through the PDF beforehand as well. What I'm looking for in terms of like a completion of the labs is really your write-up. Okay. Sweet. Is there anyone here who does not have NetLab access still? Okay. Just for the recording, also, I'm going to say, like, if you're having any issue with NetLab, please email me. That's the only channel for me to kind of act on it. Do not message on Canvas or Discord to everyone. If you're having an issue accessing NetLab, please email me. And when you email me, then please put in your student ID and your student email. And this is for issues of accessing NetLab, not if you're having trouble using NetLab, okay?
So just one more thing, sorry about it.
Okay, no worries.
So I forget to tell Anila because the last night she asked me like she cannot see what's the name she said like no repository E. She said I can see repository 2H. So if Nila just try to go click on the expand the PC.
I did that. I can see that. I still can't. I can't even see the start button. If I resize my screen, it doesn't do anything. It just stays small. I can move it around, but I can't resize it. I've tried the pressing actual size. That does nothing. But I've also like in previous semester, all of my like what are they? All the virtual machines for me all powered down, and my professor at the time had never seen that before. So.
Did you go with that?
Yeah, so let's take this a bit offline or on Discord. All right, guys. Sweet. So any comments on lab 1 to 11 in terms of content? Did anyone like one lab over another? Things like that. Did you find one lab better? One lab?
I thought all the labs were pretty useful in terms of how this stuff actually technically works. You know, it's not an academic exercise. Like, it's not really explaining the difference between physical drive and logical drive. I think that's more of what the book references, but I still found it incredibly interesting and helpful. The only one I really got stuck on was the XF tools exercise in lab 11. For the life of me, I could not do the last step where the image actually comes up. I got to the part where I saved it as a JPEG and clicked it, and then it didn't work. So I tried several different ways, but that was really the only hiccup that I had. But otherwise, I found it to be a pretty useful exercise in terms of an introduction to how these things technically work.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And we will talk a little bit about the EXIF tools as well. So please flag that and remind me again when we talk about, image tools. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was the hex value. I think Rob, Craig, and you alluded that's no space in between the hexadecimal value for the search field, and that worked after that. So thanks.
Okay, great, awesome. Okay, that's great. Okay, we'll go through each of the labs, like in any kind of like take homes you guys have from the lab where you're like, oh, this lab taught me X. Like, what you wrote in your reflection essay.
I think I had to pay more attention to the offset values. I was getting caught up in the hexadecimal, and then I realized it's for one of the exercises, it had to be the offset. But I think it would have been good if it had explained a little bit more what exactly offset is and why to pay attention to it a little bit, because I realized that was key for one of the modules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. So, yeah, we'll talk a bit about offsets in the file systems as well. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I need to probably dig a little bit deeper into the FTK imager. I mean, I'm just scratching the surface of it. Just follow the labs, but I know there's a lot more features and functionalities on that software that I don't even know what it is yet. So
Yeah. So, what I'll give you an example, what I'm looking for, like, for example, 1 and 2 labs, like, like FTK Imager, for example, right? Like what I'm really looking for you guys to kind of get the understanding or reflection. Oh, if someone gave me a disk or a computer which has a hard disk, and then I'm going to use a tool which helps me image or take a snapshot of that computer's hard disk with FTK Imager. So, You don't need to reflect and learn a lot more details about like a tool like, let's say, FTK Imager. The reason is because, technology moves very fast, and especially in field and such like that, there will be like tools which are lot easier or lot more specialized, which are maybe based on FTK Imager, or maybe autopsy, or any like, or Linux's disk drive command. But the tools might be anything, but what's important for you to sort of reflect on is, oh, there is a tool which can do this. That's what I want you guys to pay attention to. Not so much getting caught up in, oh, there is this tool and it has like 15 flags and all these different ways to kind of do something. That's important. That's great. That gives you that hands-on feeling. But like when you really practice something like that, the tools keep changing a lot all the time. So what you really want to learn is like, there is a concept like this which could be done by a tool. So that's sort of what I want you to kind of reflect on, right? So if when you're writing like your reflection, then write, there is a tool such as FTK Imager, which will help me take one image and make a copy of it, which I can analyze further. So that's kind of what I want for you guys to pay attention to. Okay. And then for lab 11, for example, right, like what you're really trying to do is like, if there is an image, I can actually look at more forensic information about that image from the metadata on that image file. And so there is a tool which helps me look at metadata of an image file. Like that's something I want you guys to reflect on.
We did that for your last class. Remember that?
Go ahead, Anthony.
We did that tool for the last class, the XF tool.
That's right. And there is a different version yeah, that's like, so sweet. And that was in CIS 55. Yeah, but cool. So that's that. I'm gonna sorry, there we go. All right. Okay. Sweet. So let's see. I'm going to quickly, before we take a break here, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, today we're going to talk about forensics and law. And when we come back, we'll go through the slides for this class. And then the readings for this class, I will look at the readings of this class right here. Okay. And so the quiz is again 10 questions, and the questions in the quiz are based on the reading for this class. What we will be talking about is being an expert witness, right? So when you are a digital forensic expert, when you're called in the court of law, you're called as an expert witness, right? So we have chapter 14, 15, and 16 in the textbook. And so these are the chapters which will cover that. So I'm gonna have working with legal professionals. A lot of this content is very non-technical, so it's a great easy read in that sense. It talks about how do you work with legal professionals, how do you be an expert witness, and then what are your obligations, ethical obligations as an expert witness. So for example, if you saw an image file and while the case is like in the court of law, are you going to go home and talk to it about it to your spouse? No. So things like that, you need to be kind of just aware of being a forensic expert. So what I'm going to do before we jump on for 14, 15, and 16 chapters, I'm going to have reading leads. And let me pick up the names of these chapters as well. So give me a minute here. who wants to, as I bring up Discord, who wants to be reading lead? And it'll be great if people other than the people who did last time, of course, you're welcome to volunteer again, are the reading leads. So I know 14 was report writing for high-tech investigations, and Roman signed up for it. Chapter 14. Roman, are you still going to do that? Is that right?
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. I just put it on Discord. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Chapter 15, expert testimony in digital investigations.
I'll take 15. This is Raven.
Raven. And pardon me if I mispronounce your name.
No worries.
Sweet. And Mo, right? Is that right? Mo, you'll take 16. I want to remind next week we'll have a guest lecturer who is like phenomenal in terms of like her understanding of file systems for Julie, and Julie's going to join us from 9:30 to 11 next week. Okay. And she is going to talk about file systems, and a lot of that is covered in chapter 5 to 8 in the textbook. So we'll be doing a lot of it as hands-on as well. Yeah, there you go. So if this is reading due for April 12th class, which will be I mean, you don't have to finish the reading, but we'll discuss the following class. Chapter 5, 6, 7, and 8. If anyone wants to sign up for these again, these are not due the next week, but these are we will discuss them on April 19th. And most of this are file system chapters. Anyone wants to sign up for any of these? So for next week, we're going to do the groups. We're going to do Roman, Raven, and Mo. We'll do 3 groups next week discussion. And then the following week, we'll have again 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll get the exact name of the chapters here in a minute. Anyone who wants to sign up from 5 to 8?
You can add me for 5.
So, Lashanta.
And I'll do chapter 6, Andrew.
I'll write the names here as well. Anyone for 7?
Sorry, do you mean that the April 5th, the April 12th class where it says April 5th class?
So the April 12th class, we will discuss the file system topics in the class, but the reading is assigned. And then in the following class, which is April 19th, we're going to do group discussion on these topics.
So for April 12th, we need to have 14, 15, and 16 read. And for April 19th, we need to have 5, 6, 7, and 8.
That's right. Yes. I'll also clarify.
Professor,
12. Yeah, go ahead.
I can take 7.
7. Who was it again? Sorry.
Reggie.
Reggie. Okay. Awesome. Reggie. All right. And I think we have one more, 8. Anyone wants to volunteer for 8?
I can do 8. This is Rob.
Great, awesome. So and we'll bring this up next class as well, and we'll do it for April 19th class as well. So this will be due April 26th. Okay. Sweet. So that we'll continue on that. What I am going to, when we're going to take a break of like maybe 5 minutes. Sorry, we are going for 2 hours now. And we'll get back at 11:20. I have made your final case study open, but I'll talk maybe when we come back, I'll talk a little bit about your final case study as well. And then we will review forensics and the law, how to be expert witness in slides today. Okay. So let's take a break and be back at 11:20.
Okay.
Awesome. Resume recording. All right, everyone, we'll get started. As we get started, I want to maybe mention a couple things. We're going to quickly cover the content, but we're going to take a break at 12. From 1 to 2:30, you guys have the lab time, but I am going to be around. So if anyone has questions, especially for I think people who are struggling with labs or things like that, then please come back to Zoom at 1 o'clock, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. And then if you're having issues with the lab, I highly recommend that you be with the computer you're using and be able to screen share it with me. Okay. So between 1 to 1:30, I will be available for you guys to come ask lab questions. And then or also just in general, if you have questions. So come back at 1 o'clock if you have questions or you need help, right? And I think Rob brought it up again, a good question. So next week, which is April 12th, from 4 to 7 p.m. there is a meetup at the school, which is official. So I am going to be at the school. I think, let me pull up where it is. It is in, so I think we talked about meeting at 2 p.m. So next week, if you want to meet in person, April 12th from 2 to 4 p.m., I will be at school. And then there is, and you can also actually interact with other students because there is an event from 4 to 7 in the student lounge. So April 12th, from 2 to 3 p.m. meet at school, building R, room room R1110. If there is any updates, I'll send that to Discord. And from, I'm typing it out so you will see it. And from 4. Who's
Do we have to be
planning?
there at 2 o'clock or is that 4 o'clock?
From at 4 o'clock, there is another event. It's called the Student Meet and Greet and social. It's a social event. It's in the same room, so I don't want to hog that room. So I just posted it in the chat here, and I also post it on Discord. And if there are any updates, I will post those there. So you guys see that in. So in-person meet, and this is again optional. You don't have to.
Didn't Mark Egan retire?
No, Mark's around. I think it just not that I know of, but and Mark's not full-time either, right? Mark, just like me, Mark has a job and he helps with the program. All right, so I also posted on Discord, and if there is any change or anything like that, I will let you know. But can you maybe post on Discord and kind of let me just give me an idea of how many of you guys are planning to be there? So that way we can kind of, and then again, if you're having issues with your computers, if you have any doubts on labs and such, bring your computers and basically we can kind of look at it in person as well. So make use of this time and kind of also let other people know if they are having issues. Just come in person there. Yeah. Sweet. All right, that was in person. Any other questions? We'll get started here. And so today's topic, and we'll cover today's topic. You see my screen? Fine. So we'll talk about legal expert witness. And this is content thanks to Hedy Durand. He's an associate director of cyber investigations. Cool. All right. Carol, do you want to add anything before I start with the content?
No, I'm good. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Awesome. All right. Are you planning to be there in person next
Yes,
Friday?
I am.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Great. Okay, sweet. All right, guys. So we'll talk about being an expert legal witness. There is 2 types of witnesses: fact witness and expert witness. Fact witness can only testify what they directly know, saw, or heard, and these are typically the type of witnesses you see on various court scenes in sitcoms and movies and such, right? An expert witness presents testimony using "in my opinion," and they're trusted for their opinion because they're experts in their field. They can they're also expected to be independent in a way of and not partisan. A qualified witness may give his opinion to help the court understand the evidence or to establish a fact in an issue. The witness is qualified by their knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education. So for example, in order for you to qualify to become an expert witness as a digital forensic expert, you want to make sure you take some curriculum, you have some certifications, and there is the certification which I talked about in the first class, which really is like an official seal of approval that this person is an expert in field of digital forensics. The methodology and procedures need to be relied upon, but they are also sort of part of the experts training. So what do you do as an expert witness? You prepare summary of your findings and an expected testimony, and you are also subjected to cross-examination if you are an expert witness. You know, you write your own report. You don't allow the counsel to write your report, because that's not what you are known for. You write your own report, right? And it is destructive to your credibility and your career if you actually let that happen, right? You won't be called in very often for some expert witnesses again. And we'll talk a little bit about what does a resume of an expert digital forensics look like. It's your specialized training, experience, membership in professional organizations, and such, right? And then we'll also look at a job requirement. What should you do if you are like being an expert? Of course, be on time, be flexible, show respect to the court. If you do not understand anything, ask the lawyer to repeat and clarify. If the counsel is attempting to get you to answer a complex question with a yes or a no, it's your right to explain your answer. So, be very professional, kind of show your integrity. Don't kind of jump to conclusions in any of those sense. And if you do not know about anything, then don't speculate. Say, I don't know, right? And do not like volunteer any information until you're asked about it, right? So that's like in general for expert legal witness. It's not very different other than your resume and curriculum. So what I really wanted to show you was maybe a little bit of like of what code of conduct you are expected to kind of do. Like if you are like if you are a digital forensics expert, right? This is sort of like the ethics code of digital forensics certification board. So this is like this is their ethics policy. What does it say? Refrain from exercising professional or personal conduct adverse to reputation, integrity, and image of digital forensics as a profession, right? Report to the board. If you are a member of DFCB, then if there are any violations you see by any, you are supposed to do that. In terms of the code of ethics, what they talk about is not to engage in any conduct which is harmful to digital forensics as a profession. Demonstrate integrity, professional diligence, avoid any action that could appear to be a conflict of interest, comply with lawful orders, show no bias with respect to findings. So express no opinion with respect to the guilt or innocence of any party. You are not the judge. The judge is doing their job. Don't disclose or reveal any confidential information until asked, right? Examine and consider thoroughly all information and have all the information, validated and show proof of procedure, right? So reporting is very important. And don't accept engagement which you don't think you are not able to do it, right? And so this is sort of like and then they have professional code of conduct. It's just like a lawyer. You're also supposed to maintain confidentiality of whatever you look at, and confidentiality means like you're not going to share what you saw on a device or an image with anyone else. So this, I wanted you guys to be aware of like the the requirements of like digital forensics certification board. So I highly encourage you guys to look at that. And then if you are sort of like, hired as a forensic analyst, right? And so what does it usually look like? So this is an example job description of uh, for a digital and network forensic analyst in Chicago. And so, CRA is, this is a company called CRA. It's looking for global consulting. It's a leading consulting firm that provides independent economic and financial analysis of litigation matters, right? As an analyst, what will you do? So these are the skills they're looking for, right? Utilize computer science to assist a senior forensics expert. And so what type of things are you going to do, including like you're looking for activities like theft of document or data destruction, deleted file recovery, network intrusion, cybercrime, or malware events, right? You're looking for proofs of these as an analyst. Of course, you're helping a senior analyst here. You will have database skills to analyze large data sets, some computer science familiarity, and then the basic is like they're saying a bachelor's or master's in computer science, digital forensics, infosec. These are sort of degrees you should have. You you must demonstrate rigorous organizational skills and attention to detail in all facets of work. So these are very important skills regardless of your technical training, right? Your organizational and attention to detail, because if you are a forensic expert, you really have to be paying attention and documenting everything, right? And so here are some of the tools they are looking at, right? So there is a tool called as NCase. This is for case management. We'll talk a little bit about it. It is FTK Forensic, which is a tool for forensic analysis. X-Ways Forensic, volatility. There is a lab in the course which covers about volatility, which looks at memory dumps. Splunk, it's for data analysis. Internet Evidence Finder, Cellbrite, which I showed you earlier today for cell phones, TCP dump, Wireshark. These are things which you have looked at in other. So these are sort of like generally tools in the field, right? Some experience in programming and technology. So I just wanted you to kind of see, like, if you take this as a career field, right? This is sort of what you want to work towards. Cool. Any questions on that? Okay, sweet. So, any questions, comments? Maybe I'll pause for a little bit.
I'd like to know how are those forensic expert witnesses paid? Is it who engages them? Is it the court system or the party can make it?
It's the court system. So like, in this case, and I'll kind of go back here just to give you a real example, right? Like in this case, for example, in this job description, right? Like if you were hired in this job, what the court would do is they would hire this company CRA, which is a leading global consulting firm that provides independent economic and financial analysis of litigation matters, delivers independent forensics and cyber investigation investigation services. So this is like an independent consulting firm which the defense or or offense hires. And you could be hired by the court system, you could be hired as a private investigation, you could be hired, but like the way you are hired is as a consulting company. And then you work for this consulting company.
Okay, thank you.
You could also work in a lab, which is another part. So there are these independent labs which are certified and which do digital forensics, and they don't go into the court. They just do, like a lab report and they provide a document and they're going to appear in a court. So you could also be working as a forensic analyst in a lab.
Okay.
Sweet. Cool. Any other questions? Okay. All right, we'll quickly cover, and these topics are thanks to Sam Bowney. I don't know if you've seen any of the lectures from Sam. He's especially if you are preparing for Security Plus or anything like that. He's a great teacher. You know, computer investigations could be public or private. We talked about that. We'll zip through some of these slides as they're like a lot, you know. So private, you know, or corporate, like which is we in the in especially like, you know, in the media and in the movies, etc. It's usually very much public investigation. So what would a private investigation be like? You know, it's like, you know, if someone is doing email harassment, falsifying data, gender or age discrimination, doing embezzlement in a company, for example. So those are instances of like a private investigation, right? Or like an industrial espionage, like someone is stealing patent documents or things like that, right? These are typically corporate investigations, and you know they are you know if you get hired into something like that, it's primarily for like, you know, cases like that, right? There is like a whole process around which you get hired in for a company as a private investigator and a private forensic analyst, where you know you sign a contract. There is do's and don'ts, and you know authorization for you to do it, things like that. Primarily because you are going to be looking at a lot of private data, and so you want to make sure that you are doing it the right way, and you are set up for you know, legal defense. I'm not going to go too much into it. And so, you know, this you will kind of maybe see in one of your labs is like, you know, these banners sort of like are displayed to make sure that, you know, only authorized users are allowed for any in a computer systems. If you're not authorized to, then you are subject to a lawsuit there, right? So, you know, typically the way you can kind of, you know, create evidence is in a private situation is very much like how you would be doing a pen test, plus you will be doing as a public investigator, which is like asking for evidence. And the way you can ask for evidence is a written request, and in some cases you can ask evidence from a government company, and the way you would sort of do that is through this public disclosure called as FOIA, which is Freedom of Information Act. So you can, for example, if you're investigating malpractices by a physician, you can ask for information release from the CMS, which is Center for Medical Services Board, and so you can look at, you know, what the physician has been prescribing and things like that, right? So that's like an example. So there is a number of public records you can ask information from, and you need this legal document called a FOIA request. So you can but without a warrant, for example, you can't ask for people's like private information like email, or you can't ask for like, so private information you can't ask without a warrant. So you have to be very aware of that in any, and if in case you get access to something like that, you should never use it, because it's not something which is legal for you to have, is people's private information. But people's public information you can get from a FOIA request legally. We'll talk about the professional conduct a little bit. So keep in mind, this is a little bit about a non-public, right? Like if you are not in court of law, what you would be doing, right? So you want to record all your fact-finding methods. You can use a journal, you can use a notebook, but you really need to be very thorough. And I'm going to show you a little bit of an example, and this is something which you're expected in your final project as well. So like, how do you really do this, report, for example, right? And I'll introduce you to your final case study a little bit. Again, it's not due until the last class. You can work in teams of 2 to 3 or even individual. But so here is an example. Let's see. Okay. So this is a case study. This is a sample case study, which I will read, and then I'll also introduce you to a final project. Law enforcement officers noticed a vehicle parked illegally in the downtown area and discovered in plain sight suspicious bulk blank credit cards, card encoder devices, and a laptop. They obtained a warrant and confiscated the evidence and have checked into the crime lab evidence room. So, this is the crime lab evidence room, which has these devices. So you work in the crime lab and are tasked with examining the devices, recovering evidence of any crime, documenting it for the investigators, right? And so you are doing the digital forensic analyst role. You discovered that one of the devices investigators checked into the evidence room is a Windows laptop. You take a deep breath as you realize that you may be about to discover that the suspect may have sent emails, conducted e-commerce, installed software, attached other devices, downloaded files that may either implicate or exonerate them from suspicion of criminal conduct. So you immediately decide to perform a forensic duplication to preserve the evidence that may contain deleted files. You begin a chain of custody for all of the evidence you collect in case you decide to hand it over to authorities, right? And so this is sort of what you would do, and so you provide a full lab report of evidence recorded. So this is a sample of how you would do it, right? And so how would you go about doing this? So you open the devices given to you are in the VDI format. And so this is basically like, the computer they might be running. So you open the VDI file, you mount the, the storage drive, and then, you open VirtualBox and you will see like, oh, this has like hard disks and the hard disks are of this nature. So you would basically go through this. And so once you kind of do that, you create a new device, which will basically, and there is some step instructions to do that on how you would kind of clone that device. So, so this is sort of the case study you would be working through. The steps you would follow, it is similar to some of your labs where you will clone that image, and you will create a report. Now, what does this report look like? So this is the sample report, right? So this is digital and multimedia evidence examination report. Let's say, submitting agencies, San Francisco Police Department, etc., etc. What was the evidence submitted? There is, a Seagate hard device, some acquisition software tools, analysis tools, things like that. And then, this is like a template of like, what you would write, So, I connected the hard drive to the computer using a write blocker, then used the hard drive with FTK imager. So, now you understand why you want to use FTK imager, right? Like, I processed the image to extract and analyze the data. So this is like the summary of what you are submitting as your report, right? Windows XP Service Pack 3 was found, installed on V1D1. The install date was recorded as this. The registered owner was recorded as this. The computer name was this. The default user name was this. No logon times or logon counts has been recorded for the administrator. The guest account has been disabled. So this is sort of the report you will be presenting, right? I perform a search using the keywords bomb, explosive, Obama, Bay Bridge, terrorist, things like that. And then, I found these, bookmark badges, driver's license images, etc., etc. And then this image was, you kind of complete your forensic report. So this is sort of like what you are going for, right? Like when you're kind of keeping the journal and writing things down, this is the level of detail you want to be able to get to. Does that help? Are you guys following me here?
Is this template going to be available? Sorry if I missed that, if you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, this template will be available with your final project. Like in the final project, there is a case study, and there is a case study which you can kind of, try out. And so this template is available in that. So the one I read you, and my apologies, I wasn't quite clear. This is sort of the case study you will be doing for your final. And then this one I kind of showed you. This one you would be kind of doing as like, as a trial. And so you will get some image files, and you would be working on it together or independently. I would love if you guys team up together, but independent is fine as well. So this is what you're kind of working towards, right? Like as your final project. There is like, tools like DD or stuff like that. Your results, this is just a sample. You could like, you could, yeah, let me see. Yeah, you could, yeah, we can just use a similar, we'll make a different one like this one. Okay, but basically this is sort of what we would be looking for. You will get VirtualBox images, and you will be looking at something like this. So I wanted to introduce this early on, so you guys are aware of like, what your final project is. You don't have to start working on it, but I wanted to give a sense. And then this sort of ties in nicely with like, when you are documenting something in your case, like, what you're documenting towards, so you could kind of create a report like this, right? And the software, like, someone mentioned about like, FTK being used, right? Like you would actually use it in like, real investigations this way as well.
So is the deliverable, just to clarify, is the deliverable for the final project, as it were, I think that's the right word, that summary report?
Yeah, there is number of deliverables for final project, including you guys presenting it and creating the report as well. So yes, there is that.
So the final class is essentially going to be devoted then to the presentations?
Yeah, it will be presentations and chapter discussion, your last reading discussions as well. There won't be any new content in the last class. Sweet. So that was the content. So this module is also available. So if you are looking, this all of this stuff is in the syllabus. So today we covered forensics methodology, legal aspects of forensics and being an expert witness. That's sort of what we covered today. Next week, we'll cover file system forensics and methodology. And you can get all the readings for this. If I know some people were asking what chapters to read. They are in the modules. So for this one, for methodology, you will for today's class, you're reading Forensic and Expert Law, April 12th. You're reading 14, 15, and 16, and that's sort of there. There is no expectation that you submit the summaries in Canvas. What I'm looking for in Canvas, and this is sort of the assignment for next week, and is your quiz 2. So this quiz is based on the reading of chapter 14, 15, 16. It has 10 questions. So, you can I'll maybe look at 1 or 2 questions here. So, as an expert witness, you have opinions about what you have found or observed. So you want to kind of, write about that. You should create a formal checklist of your procedures that are applied to all your cases and include a checklist in your report. And so, so you should include that. So in the quiz, you will see the questions like that, and you can have multiple attempts, and these all are based on your reading. Okay. And if you are late, that's okay, but I'm expecting the quizzes to be submitted before next class. If you have any questions on the quiz or anything like that, use Discord. If it is personal, email me. That's the way on the quiz. And your net labs for next week, you will see, it's 4, 10, 12, 15, 16, and 17. And again, the due portion for the net lab is just reflection essay. There is no like capture the flag or answer this question sort of a thing for the net lab. So you have 6 labs. So this week is a bit lab heavy in that sense, but most of the labs are fairly straightforward. Let me see. And then I think someone had question about your weekly status report. Again, the status reports are only 1% of your grade. They are not a huge portion of your grade. So what I'm expecting you guys to do is like submit like on a weekly level, just like what did you work on that week and what did you have trouble with that week. It doesn't need to be very detailed or anything like that, but it's something you would be doing if you were working in a company. You would be doing that every week regardless. So that's sort of what I'm expecting. I know we had a holiday next week, so I was expecting people still do like the week off. You can submit it once a week, and so now on the class is every week, so this lines well with that. And then as you submit it, it'll be good if you add it or please send it in Discord as well. So that way people also see what other people have been working on or are having issues with, and they keep more active. So I just want you guys to be, giving just a weekly pulse of what you're doing. Doesn't have to be very detailed. So that's due. It's only 1% of your grade, but it's something I want to kind of get you into, and also the course, like how Brian, Carol, and Sarah designed it. They wanted to make it feel like more like your job, right? And that's what you will be doing at your job. So hopefully that clears out on the weekly report set of things. I have made the case study open, but the details of this, like what I've saved, I will add them in your final case studies here. Bear with me as I kind of add, because it has like these huge files, so it will take me a little bit to add. But the final case studies are of the nature I showed you, and you will present them in the class as well.
Can I ask a clarification question on the quiz? It looked, when you had it on the screen, it didn't quite look like it was questions. Is it a summary or what exactly was that?
It'll work out. So let me show you. So it is
Okay,
a
I didn't see
question.
this part.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
there's something else that.
Yeah, that was an edit mode. That's why it didn't show up. So you will basically, it's a question. It's auto graded as
Great,
well.
thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Sweet. We are right at the top of the hour. We will wrap up this class. I will be back on this exact same Zoom at 1 o'clock. And if you have any questions, please hop in and use the time to ask any questions or help you with the labs. So I will leave it at that. And then the other thing I'll mention is please respond if you're coming for the in-person thing next week at the school. So that way I have an idea of how many people to expect. I will be back on this exact same Zoom at 1 o'clock. Next week onwards, we will be on the regular Zoom. This week, we had a bit of a technical issue, so that's why we use this Zoom link. Next week onwards, use the Zoom link, the old Zoom link. Yeah. And I will also make sure that's updated in the course link over there as well. Okay, sweet. Okay, all right, guys. Any closing questions, comments? Otherwise, I'll see you, some of you guys, at 1 o'clock. There is no lecture as such at 1, but if you have questions or lab issues, I will be there to answer them at 1 o'clock. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Okay, all right. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you guys next week. And make sure you post on Discord and stay active.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.